Hi, I'm Heather from Booktubes, and today is romances with chronic illness and disability representation in them. When I put this on my calendar, I actually did not realize that it was Disability Pride Month. I'm currently planning content for September. I planned ahead, so it was before July started, and on July 1st, I was like, oh, it's Disability Pride Month. So anyways, we'll just call that lucky happenstance. I do think that chronic illness and disability rep are underrepresented in our romance books. There are some romance booktubers who really do an exceptional job of recommending these books. Ava from Ava's Romance Books. Please tell me I got that right. I probably didn't. She does chronic illness and disability rep recommendation videos frequently. She has several on her channel. There's a wide range of representations, and also she does a fair bit of historical romances with representation. I've read a couple based on her recommendation and enjoyed them. Another one is Bree from 11 Words. She has had a couple different live shows, several recommendations. And Tori from Novel Life also has several recommendation videos for romances with these representations, and Tori also reads a fair bit of historical romance. So all of them have chronic illnesses, so they are kind of own voice reviewers, and they are frequently reading and recommending these books. Also, not a bookish account, but if you want to be more aware about disability advocacy and awareness and activists, Imani Barbaran is a creator that I follow on TikTok and on Twitter. She is an activist. She talks a lot about the intersectionality of specifically Blackness and disability. She also talks a lot about different types of disabilities, visible disability, and all these things. I can't tell you how much I have learned from just following her. Honestly, if you're going to follow one account, probably just to kind of be a little more aware, she's the one. Can't recommend enough, honestly. So all of them are linked in the description, and if this is something that you care about, want to read, want to know more about, I would recommend these people. These are some that are maybe a little less well known, and that's why I picked them. The first one is I Think I Might Love You by Christina C. Jones. This is a true rom-com with a walking disaster of a main character and the love interest who is trying desperately to avoid being collateral damage. They have a violent meet cute, they have some very funny scenes, but also the love interest is lactose intolerant, and that plays into the story. Also by Christina C. Jones, Relationship Goals has a love interest with a chronic illness. I don't see too many male love interests being the one that is sick, and so that really stood out to me. I thought that it talked really well about how if you have a disability or if you have a chronic illness, you have to live with that. You have to deal with all the ramifications of that, of the ableism that it surrounds you in the system and in people. But if you are going to just be the loved one of someone, that's a choice that you can make. You can leave them, right? And he really specifically was like, hey, please don't date me because you don't think it's going to be that hard, because it is going to be that hard. I thought that was a really interesting theme and conversation throughout the book. Also by Christina C. Jones, I have Getting Schooled, which is Wright Brothers #1. This is a teaching assistant and an older student, so he is ex-military. He's not in his early 20s, he's older. He has a leg that has been amputated. They have a love-to-hate relationship. And then the second book in the series is about his brother, who is a doctor, and he is dating a nurse practitioner, maybe, whatever is the one one step under a doctor, like right one step, and they have a very hate to love romance because he is attracted to her, doesn't want anything to do with it, so he very immaturely pokes at her all the time to try and get a reaction. And she has diabetes, and that does again play out on page. There is a uncomfortable scene with an ex not taking no for an answer and being physically aggressive, so do be aware of that. Content warning. Then I have Let Me Please You by Alexandria House. This is also a hero with diabetes. This is the bodyguard of the famous brothers dating the sister who is fully grown, kind of on the sly. is a giant of a man, but he has diabetes and he will not eat while he's on the job. And because he's a bodyguard, that is often 12 plus hours, right? And so she just kind of wants to beat him and be like, hey, take care of yourself. And so that is a theme throughout, where she will angrily try and make him take care of himself. Then I have The Thief, which is The Queen's Thief #1 by Megan Whalen Turner. This is actually a representation recommendation for the whole series, and it's not really present in the first book. You will have multiple characters with multiple different conditions and disabilities, but it's not really present in the first book. This is a fantasy series. You do absolutely have to read it in order. There is a little bit of a romance, but it's a much smaller part of the series. It's young adult, so there is no steam. And like I said, the romance is not really the focus, although there are a couple different romances and they are prevalent. Also, content warning, this is a very ableist society, and so some of the language and or the way that they treat, especially like a character that we meet much later in the series, very badly. Very badly. So do be aware of that. Content warning, there's gonna be a few different things that are very sad and uncomfortable and to read. This is a thief who claims that he can steal anything, but he's been caught and thrown in prison and is rotting there and has not escaped like he claimed he could. And the political powers that be decide to use him to steal an unstealable object, and we go on a journey to steal it. There you go. It's my all-time favorite series. Just read it, okay? And I have Scrap, which is Stillbones Motorcycle Club #3 by Cate Wells. This is a motorcycle club romance where he has been in prison for 10 years for killing the man who raped her. So obviously content warning for that. She was 16. She was violently attacked. So not only was she raped, but also a knife was used extensively. She can no longer have children. She has massive scarring on her stomach. She went through multiple surgeries, multiple hospital stays, and has not dealt super well with the trauma. Despite having therapy, she has a lot of PTSD, anxiety, horrible panic attacks where she's screaming like a wounded animal. And he was 22 when he went away. She was 16. And he was in love with her. So obviously, slight content warning for underage. All they had done is like a single kiss. And he was waiting for her. But he's been in love with her for as long as he's known her. And he's been away for 10 years, hasn't seen her, comes back, and she's like a completely different person. She no longer dresses up. She's put on a lot of weight. She obviously has this horrible anxiety. She doesn't want to talk to him. She doesn't want to see him. She very much feels like, you know, she's not good enough. And why would he want to be with her anyways? He is in love with her and will do anything to be with her and is so patient and kind and caring. As always with Cate Wells, there's just like so much stuff at the beginning that you're just like, oh, you poor babies. But then the story continues and you do get that very sweet romance between them. You just get to see them be happy. Also by Cate Wells, The Tyrant Alpha's Rejected Mate. The rejected mate is disabled. She has a limp. She has a very bad leg. And that happened in an attack when she was a child. She's never shifted before, but she realizes that the alpha is her mate when another woman is touching him, and she shifts and attacks her and is like, you're my mate. And he's like, no, I'm not. So he rejects her in front of the entire clan. It's terrible. And she is in so much pain and agony from being rejected from the mating bond. Like, that's not supposed to happen. And she goes to the witch, and the witch takes the bond out of her end, but it's still in his end. So he can't seem to leave her alone, even though he's not her mate, because he would know if she was his mate. Like, he's the big strong alpha. He would know. So that can't be it. And but his wolf is like, nah man, we are staying as close to her as we can figure out how to be. And she is actually running like a contraband business behind his back and stuff. It's great. So she is severely underestimated, underappreciated, viewed as kind of worthless in their pack. She's not. She's not. And the pack is very misogynistic, very backwards, and he's made progress from the time his father was alpha, but like the single females still aren't allowed to have cell phones and things like that. So he's gonna have to grovel, and he's gonna have to improve things for the single females, and there's gonna be a lot of goodness. But at the beginning you're just like, wow, I hate everybody, I hate all of you. Also by Casey Wells, Hitting the Wall, which is Stonecut County #1, is a kind of hard-hitting contemporary about realizing that your privilege and the way people treat you because of your privilege doesn't give you the entire snapshot of their character. They can actually treat other people really terribly while treating you really well. And so we have I feel like I'm not going to talk you into reading this, but it's so good. You have a 22-year-old police officer, golden boy, rich family kid who has sex with a stranger at a bonfire. And that's it. He had a one-night stand at a bonfire. That's all he knows. Turns out she was actually underage, gets pregnant when there is a rumor going around that she's pregnant by this police officer. Several of the men in the town go to her trailer and intimidate her into leaving, because we wouldn't want to ruin this guy's reputation, because we know he didn't do it. So she leaves, and then she has her daughter. She's a single mom. It's 6 years later, and her daughter is autistic and is kind of nonverbal, not in that she cannot speak, but in that she doesn't. And she's a high school dropout who's a single mom with no support system, and the school is just giving her so many issues, and she doesn't know what to do. So she decides to go back to Stonecut County, save up money by living in this trailer for really cheap, and get her daughter the advocacy and the programs that would actually be beneficial for her. So she does that. She and her daughter are walking alongside the road, and the police officer sees them. And he knew nothing. He didn't know anything. As far as he knows, he had a one-night stand at a bonfire. And he recognizes her, and her daughter is the spitting image of his sister, who is also autistic, and his world comes crashing down, and now he has to try and convince her to let him be in their life. And it's so good. So yeah, you have kind of the representation of the daughter being autistic, and also his sister, who is a grown adult, being similar, and kind of like the difference in parenting approach between the two. And you have like a mom who doesn't have a lot of resources at her fingertips, but she cares. And because she cares, she will do any and everything for her daughter. And it's just so heartwarming, gut-wrenching, just, oh, she got me. Then I have Iron Widow by Jiren J. Zhao. This is a young adult fantasy, and it is a fantasy sci-fi historical blend, and we have a polyamorous relationship, and our main character is very much burn the patriarchy to the ground. She is non-binary, but is based in China, and she does endure the foot binding, and because of that she does use a wheelchair or a cane. She, was mutilated by her family, and it really does go into that extensively. And women just, they don't really have rights, and they have these giant mechs that are powered up by willpower basically, and the female pilots die almost every single time. They're pretty much fuel for the mechs. Their families are compensated. Her sister goes to be a concubine pilot, and she dies before ever making it into battle. So our main character decides to go be a concubine pilot and to kill the famous pilot who has killed her sister. And things go awry, and she does kill him, but everybody knows it, and they're all scared of her, because she is an Iron Widow. She is a girl who survived while the boy did not in the mech battle. And so she is forced to marry the most powerful pilot in the world. The only problem with that is that he's a convicted killer who murdered his whole family and is a prisoner with 0 rights. And then you have the rich boy friend that she's been friends with since childhood, who also is in love with her and is trying to finagle things, and it's not really working out for him. He's a little bit of a ruthless cinnamon roll. He's very happy-go-lucky, but also like totally willing to kill all the people. So you have this triad who are going to be polyamorous in all the ways, and kind of their quest for power to keep themselves safe. It's so good. It's so good. I'd been anticipating it for long before it came out because of ARC early reviews, and it did not disappoint me at all. I loved it. Then I have Ryan by Jessica Gaziella. This has agoraphobia rep, and this is a Own Voices author for agoraphobia. So this is romantic suspense, and it's also dual POV. So our guy is a loan shark. He's kind of the brains behind a lot of it. He doesn't do the physical dirty work so much. And you have this girl who doesn't leave her apartment and is his neighbor, and he's very into her, but she never leaves her apartment. And one of her friends gets her to hide drugs, and somebody comes into her apartment and ransacks it and beats her. So her apartment is no longer a safe zone for her. And so she kind of transfers to him. I love the romantic suspense elements. I had never read about agoraphobia before reading this book. I really loved that this was a progression of healing with the understanding that it was never going to just go away. Yes, there might be ways to actually leave your house, but always it's going to be a little bit of an issue, and you have to take care of it, and also you have to not beat yourself up for any setbacks. I loved it. Jessica Gaziella writes a lot of mental health rep. Another mental health one is The Cleaner, which features severe OCD, and he's the cleaner for a fixer agency. So he literally cleans crime scenes so that their clients don't get caught. It's not that he can't be around mess or anything like that. It's just that cleaning is how he deals with his demons. That has to be way more than any sort of, what's the word where you're just like doing your own house? Like way more than that. So he does the crime scenes and he is fanatical about it. But he uses a very specific cleaner that he makes himself, and a true crime podcaster in the town has figured out that there are multiple crime scenes that are abnormally clean, and also they have the specific cleaner smell. So she is convinced that there is a serial killer on the loose, and she is bound and determined to catch him. And the hacker for the figure agency realizes this and tells Flynn, hey, she's on your trail. You've messed up. You need to switch your cleaners out, which he's obviously not happy about because that's part of his routine. I can't think of the word I want. Where you do the same thing in the same order every time. Like he needs his type of cleaner, but his interest is piqued, so he arranges a casual bumped into you meeting with this true crime podcaster and falls in love with her without confessing. And again, she thinks she's on the path of a serial killer. So it's so good. Also, her dog has terrible anxiety, and the way they bond and the way he takes care of the dog is so cute. And then lastly, I have Autumn of the Witch by Iris Foxglove. This is a polyamorous BDSM fantasy book where polyamory is an accepted part of the world, and also it seems like everyone is dominant or submissive. I've only read this one book by them, but it seems like that is the thing. And you have a very large, giant, happy-go-lucky, submissive man who rescues a toy maker in the woods who is a virgin, who is dominant, and who seems to be autistic. Then you also have the tiny, chronically ill, dominant witch who is the giant's wife. And so they rescue the toy maker and they welcome him in. And I was a little bit worried that the chronic illness in this was going to be magically cured, because the toy maker dominant is also a witch and has like this whole book of spells and recipes and all these things. And it does help her health, like, strengthening brews and things like that. but it is not a magical cure. You end the book with her still knowing she's going to have episodes and relapses and flare-ups. And while he can help her, he can't make her better. And I was happy about that. I didn't want a magical cure in the middle of the book where like, oh, everything's fine now. Because that's not real life as much as we would like for it to be. So I loved it. She's so prickly, and both her dominants are like very prickly, and our submissive is just like so happy. And do be aware that this is sadism and masochism, so he loves pain, and there's a lot of pain play in it. So be aware that if that is very much not your thing, it's how most of the sexy times go. So just know that. But I really enjoyed the writing. It was a very pleasant surprise for me. I saw this book because they responded to me on Twitter saying that it was coming out, and I was like, that sounds amazing. And it was amazing. I really loved it. So I was really happy to get this in a fantasy setting. So I tried to give you ones a little bit more under the radar maybe, but if you've read or loved any of these, please let me know. If you have more recommendations for me, let me know. And if you aren't already following the creators that I mentioned, I do highly recommend. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.